Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Lunar Temple Podcast and this very special episode all about honouring Samhain and honouring the month of November and welcoming in the beginning of winter, which is what Samhain symbolizes, it's what Samhain initiates. So this episode is going to be a combination of what I would normally be doing on a Monday with the Monday or Moon Day Musings episode. So we will talk about the week ahead this week. So beginning here on Monday, the 31st of October, Samhain Eve, and what we can expect from the moon this week. But then it will be a broader look at Samhain itself and welcoming in a brand new month as we are stepping into the month of November tomorrow. So before we begin, I just want to apologise for any strange background noises. You can't see, those of you who are watching, you can't see on camera, but Bowie, so my big, beautiful wolf dog is, he's just by my feet, but he's very loudly licking his paws. So I just didn't want you to think there's, well, that I was making those noises. And obviously, if you're listening on the podcast, it might sound even more strange. But yes, so he's in the room with me. We've been away this weekend in London and he's a bit clingy. So I thought I would I'll risk him interrupting us because yeah, he needs the company. But yeah, there may well be some wolfish interruptions. But you know, the more that I record content both via podcast and YouTube, I'm really trying to shake off this need for perfection, you know, because I think I spent so long not releasing stuff because it hasn't been perfect, or it doesn't have a beautiful montage of images to begin with, or a beautiful you know, it doesn't have beautiful background music and all of this stuff. And I just think, you know, done is better than perfect, and it's just nice to be getting stuff out into the world. And it's been really nice to have the encouragement of feedback from people who've been really enjoying the episodes. So it just comes with the chaos of having a toddler and two very inquisitive naughty dogs. So today we are stepping into the Samhain portal. So today is the eve of Samhain, or a lot of people view today as Samhain itself, the 31st of October. The more that I personally work with the Wheel of the Year, to me, I honour this as Samhain Eve, and Samhain being November the 1st. There's a couple of reasons for this. One reason is it's the opposite of Samhain is Bealtaine, May Day, and that is the celebrations begin the day before, but May Day itself, or Bealtaine itself, is May the 1st, and so it makes sense that the opposite to that is Samhain being the 1st of November, and then the eve of Samhain being the 31st of October. But I think it's become so synonymous with the 31st because of modern day Halloween and all the kind of intricacies of all the things that are kind of wrapped up in that. The other reason that makes logical sense to me for Samhain, if you're looking at it being a day, we'll talk about that in a minute, is it is the Irish word for the month of November. So it makes sense that it is in November. But it is interesting to note, we've talked about this before with the Wheel of the Year, when you're looking at kind of Celtic practices, for want of a better title, they would often start the celebrations the day before, and they would start the evening of the day before. And I think this is why there is so much that the eve, Samhain Eve, Halloween, has become the traditional day to celebrate. But really, there's so many different ways that you could honor this time of the year. You could treat it as an entire month. If you're looking at the translation of the word Samhain as being the month of November, then you could have that as the whole month. I've spoken before about how I view each wheel of the year as a season. It just gives me a lot of space and a lot of time to honor all the details of each festival. And so for me, I think, yeah, I was thinking about it this morning in preparation for recording this. I used to think of it as starting with the 31st of October and then leading all the way up to the winter solstice. But now I'm kind of treating it 31st of October and then for the whole of November. And then the beginning of December is really that beginning of Advent and the countdown to the solstice, the winter solstice. So it slightly changed my view and my practice. And that really brings me on to a really important point that I wanted to share with you today. There's a lot of information online around these practices and what the Wheel of the Year is and what it isn't, and the history and the traditions and how to honor it. And whilst I think it's deeply important, and I speak about this often, of knowing where things come from and pronouncing things correctly and honoring the culture and honoring the language and honoring where these things belong. I also think that there's a tendency to get lost in reading or listening to how people think we should be practicing it. Sometimes even it can lean into people being very argumentative about what you should and shouldn't be doing. And what I would like us all to come back to is that in truth, the wheel of the year is nature's wheel. And the importance of that wheel was that it was at a time where nature and the land and the crops were dictating these rhythms and these cycles and these celebrations. When we're looking at the harvest practices, for example, they wouldn't have been on a set date because it would have been very, very dependent on when the harvest was ready, when the harvest was brought in. When we look at things in the new year, the approach of Imbolc, they would have been celebrated when those first signs of spring appeared. And I think part of our disconnection with nature is that we've become overly concerned and reliant on cementing these dates and saying this is what it should be, and this is how it is, and this is how it always was, and this is the way. And that's where we get into these arguments or people thinking one way is better than the other. So I feel a balance is really important here. Honor the history, honor the cultures. I've said many times, with these words that we use, pronounce them correctly, because a lot of these words are living languages. Irish is a living, breathing language. Samhain is an Irish word, and it is the word for November, and it means summer's end. So that's where I feel it's important, because we're honoring an existing culture, we're honoring an existing living, breathing language, and a language that is very important when it has been suppressed, when it has been punished to speak native Irish. So that's where I feel, yeah, that is important. Let's try and get that right. Let's try and be respectful there. But where I feel we need more of a balance is people saying you should be practicing it this way on this day and doing it like this. Because your spiritual practice is your spiritual practice, and what I would really invite you into this year is, yes, absorb the history, learn about the traditions, but what does Samhain mean to you? And is it even called Samhain to you? This is one word for this time of year belonging to Ireland, and many of the traditions around this time of year can be traced back to Ireland, but it is called many different names depending on the different countries. So that is very interesting as well. You don't have to call it Samhain if you're Scottish, if you're Welsh, if you're any other heritage. What is this time of year to you? What is the name of this time of year? And what is appearing outside your window. I've heard many people say it doesn't feel like Samhain to them because it is not cold enough, and I really resonate with that. It's not the kind of biting cold that I would normally associate with this time of year, and so people are kind of pausing their celebrations until it feels a little bit more that nature is moving in that way. Maybe the 31st of October is really special to you, wrapped up with your own memories of celebrating Halloween, and that feels like the right time. Maybe it is that 1st of November, the beginning of the month, and that move into the winter season. Maybe it's the season, as I mentioned before. And then we also have what's called astrological Samhain, which is I think this year it's the 7th of November, but it's a little bit more specific date for the midpoint between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice. Yeah, so there's also that date as well, and people feel very strongly that they want to honor that. And what I find really interesting about that day is it moves every year, but it's kind of around the 5th, the 6th, the 7th of November. And when we look at what happens, particularly in England on that weekend, well, not that weekend, but that date, and the weekend closest to it, should I say, is it's bonfire night, isn't it? And that has become really associated with Guy Fawkes. But bonfires at this time of year have existed way before Guy Fawkes, and it's very interesting to see how that continues, but the narrative around it has changed. So when you look at Irish history, when you look at what was traditionally happening in Scotland, Wales, and throughout England and the Isle of Man, you can see this history of big sacred bonfires that were used to honor this closing of the year and this beginning of the winter months. So I find that really interesting as well, because actually this the date of bonfire night would have really coincided with a very, very strong pre-existing pagan bonfire. So if you're somebody that doesn't connect at all with bonfire night in its presentation of it being associated with Guy Fawkes, that's a really nice way to reclaim that, and just know that actually there would have always been sacred bonfires at this time of the year, and we don't have to be celebrating burning somebody on a bonfire. So that's been really helpful to me over the years, just understanding a little bit more about the history, and that bonfires were such a big part of the celebration at this time of year, as they are for all the cross-quarter festivals. They're all fire festivals. So Samhain, Imbolc, Bealtaine, and Lunar are all fire festivals, so they would have all been gathering the community around these big fires, and then lots of traditions related to farming, blessing the year, if it's to do with beginning the crop season or closing out of the crop season. So the other thing that you hear about this time of year is people refer to it as, well, a few things. So Celtic New Year, Witches New Year, November 1st being like a New Year's Day, if you like. And again, there's lots of different perspectives on that. There's not a huge amount of historical evidence about it being a new year, but those traditions definitely live on. For me personally, I view it as the end of the year, but I don't view it as the beginning of the year. Okay, so Samhain to me is liminal space, and it is the death of the year because we're looking at everything dying back. It's the end of the harvest. That is the other thing that is very significant about Samhain. It's the third of the harvest festivals, and it's the final one, that final preparation for the winter. But it doesn't feel like a new year. So for me, I kind of hold this liminal space until February, and Imbolc to me is more of a new year. There's the inklings of a new year at the winter solstice because the sun is reborn, and that's part of the story sort of storytelling of this time of year too. So at Samhain, the sun dies, and at the winter solstice, it is reborn. But again, I think because the winter solstice, you're still in the depths of winter, it doesn't feel like that significant of a new year feeling. But for me, Imbolc really is. So those first signs of spring, the snowdrops, the green shoots, that kind of sense of thawing, and being able to see a little bit more into the approach of spring. That's just my personal practice. I'm not saying that you should view it that way. It's just taken me a long time to find that rhythm for myself. So I do honor Samhain as the end of the Celtic calendar, but I don't honor it as the start. I have this space, this empty, this liminal space, like a bardo, that intermediary state between death and rebirth. And that really, to me, invites in all of those ideas connected with the underworld and shadow and rest, and that real sense of retreating and going underneath the earth, underneath the soil. So the other thing, there's so many traditions that we can talk about. I wanted to simplify for this episode because one of the things that has become very, very significant and really beautiful and magical for me, and again, I'm talking about my own practice here, is really using Samhain as a season to connect with my ancestors and my beloved dead. So I actually spent this morning making my ancestor tree. So it's a beautiful, similar to this fairy light tree behind me, but it's smaller. And I've just been attaching photographs of my grandparents, my cousin who passed away, and I need to put my aunt and uncle up, and some of my dear friends who are no longer here. And I'm just decorating that tree. I've got candles to go around the base of it, and then I will often bring down my jewelry that I've been given as well from relatives, and little trinkets and things that I've got from them as well, and that will all go around the tree. And it's a time to draw close to your beloved dead, to your ancestors, and to your roots. So what I really love about this time of year is it is a time of remembering. So remembering your loved ones and remembering who you are. So when we look at what nature is doing right now, it is that retreat from the external, coming to center, and then going down into the earth and down into the roots. So I think I said this in the last episode, but for me, that word roots is very, very much a mantra for this time of year. So this initiation into winter, this beginning with ancestral worship and connection, this remembering, it's all bringing you to your roots. So that real sense of coming home to who you are and what you're about, and the return to your heart, if you like. And I just think there's such magic in that, talking about memories and stories and good times and funny things. And I want to start a little bit more work on my family tree this year, which I did a lot of work on at Samhain last year. So I'll be getting all of that back out. I want to be writing up like recipes from my nans, and writing down more stories, doing more, getting more research done on our on our family lines, and kind of countries of heritage and all of this. So it's such a beautiful time of year to do that. If you've never thought of it that way, because Halloween is so different now, it is very kind of centered around parties and dressing up and all those wonderful things that actually are historically traditional. So the dressing up, the trick-or-treating, carving pumpkins, all of these things have existed for a very, very long time, but we seem to have missed out this part about ancestors and about honoring your dead. And I think that is another symptom of modern times, because we kind of take the fun stuff and sometimes edit out the stuff that maybe we don't value as much in modern society. And I think we feel collectively there is an uncomfortableness and unease around talking about death. And that's one thing that I think would be wonderful to breathe new life into, and it's something that I will definitely be sharing with my daughter. That is a big part of this time of year. So yeah, we'll still do all the fun stuff, pumpkins and trick-or-treating and dressing up and all of these things, but there'll also be these quiet practices of reverence for our family, for our loved ones, for our ancestry. And as I said, that real sense of roots. And you can allow that theme to just move through you for the rest of the winter. So starting with ancestors, starting with your family, and looking as well at what needs healing there, the shadows of this. We're in eclipse season, so there may well be trauma rising to the surface, things in our relationships, old wounds that need tending to and healing, and things that need releasing and cleansing. And then as we move from November into December, we can start to get into that feeling of dreaming, the dreaming months, where everything is very dark, everything is very quiet, and we can be invited into the dreaming. So not just who are you as a person due to your roots of your family and your ancestry, but who are you in terms of your soul self. How is your soul speaking to you? What inspiration is rising up for you to follow? And how can you feed yourself and nourish yourself over the winter to kind of nourish all those seeds underneath the soil that can then burst forth next year. So I've mentioned many times, like, I really like winter time to be lots of reading, lots of magical films, really allowing my inner child to direct, and the Christmas season, the festive season can really lend itself to that. I think that's what people look forward to a lot about that time of year, is being able to honor the inner child and to let ourselves believe in magic and goodness, and decorate and have fun and be merry and bright and all of those things. So the card that I've actually drawn for us today, in honor of Samhain and in honor of a new month, is from the Archetypes deck by Kim Kranz, one of my favorite decks. And it is this one here called The Vision. I mean, the artwork on these cards is exquisite. She does all the illustrations herself, and she sort of uses a mixture of these just beautiful bright inks and watercolors, and then really detailed black and white illustrations. So yeah, I think as well as her oracle deck's been amazing, I really she's one of my favorite artists as well. So I wanted to read to you about this card. So the vision, the dream, the imagined, the revealed. It is said that we are each born with a unique vision, a destiny toward which we are aimed. It is also said that we forget this vision the moment we are born. Thus, we are sent on a lifelong journey of rediscovery. Such is the elusive nature of the vision. It slips away, yet it guides. It appears in strange dreams and surreal images, seemingly unattainable and preposterous. When we are connected to the vision, we carry an inspired, enchanted aliveness that others recognize. We trust the world and its synchronicities. We walk through new doors into wondrous opportunities. We all want to be near those with vision. They emit energy more potent than any elixir. When we lose connection to the vision, life becomes dull and exhausting, lacking meaning. Bring back the mystery, bring back the dreams. So I sort of couldn't believe when I pulled that card, because it's so relevant to what I was just saying about winter and the dreaming. And, this can be a really beautiful time to reconnect with your vision. And if you resonate with that feeling of kind of feeling dull, feeling heavy, and feeling a lack of inspiration, how could we welcome this archetype back into our life? And often this dullness, this lack of inspiration, this lack of drive comes when we are burnt out or burning out, and it's because we haven't let ourselves be refilled back up again. So you can check in with that too, like if you've only been pouring out, if you've only been in the cycle of producing, but you've not been resting and you've not been letting yourself be filled back up again, then it's likely that we won't feel creative, or that we've got any ideas, or that we want to act on any ideas that we may have. Yeah. So listen to the signals of your soul and your body, and if you are pushing through tiredness and pushing through exhaustion, and your body is craving rest, and your mind is craving rest, and your soul is craving rest, please listen to yourself. November, it can be a month where we start to ramp things up towards the festive season if we're not careful, or we can really try our best to try and slow down. So Slovember or capital N-O November. So just try and remember that we are moving into winter. Our bandwidth energetically is not the same. It's not sustainable. And there's lots of just illnesses flying around at this time of year. And the heaviness of eclipse season. Mars went retrograde on the weekend as well. So, there's heavy energies in here as well, astrologically speaking. So just be kind to yourself and really value yourself enough to let yourself be nourished and refilled and replenished and inspired. Okay. One of the ways that you could do that, here's a little segue. So I'm very proud to be one of the instructors at Mystery School of the Goddess. So I can't remember. I think I've been maybe I've been an instructor for a couple of years on Mystery School of the Goddess, but I joined Mother House of the Goddess, which is Kimberly Moore's amazing platform. And I just fell in love with her teachings. I signed up to her courses, and then I noticed that she was doing priestess training, and I'd been looking for a long time for the right place to do my priestess training. And I thought, I really like Kimberly. She's got a lot of knowledge, but she's also very real. She's very funny. And she's got what I really need from my teachers is a lack of bullshit. I don't like fake spirituality. I don't like people being one thing, on camera or in person, and then another thing behind closed doors. I like people to just keep it real. And most of my teachers over the years, most of my mentors, most of my spiritual teachers, have been like that, very funny, very sweary, but walk the talk, and incredible spiritual teachers who have really transformed my life, actually. And Kimberly is one of those people. So if you're watching or listening to this, Kimberly, just know that I love you very much. So yes, anyway, I'd been studying with her, and then she asked if I wanted to join Mystery School as a teacher, and I was just beyond grateful and overwhelmed. And so anyway, I've been doing that. As many of you know, that's where all my online courses are, and some of the facilitator trainings that I have hosted as well have been through there. But what we did last year was a free Samhain fest. And it was so much fun, and people really, really enjoyed it. So we're doing it again this year. It opened yesterday, and I think it's going for a couple of weeks. It's all free. I will put the link to sign up in the show notes, as I usually do when I remember, but I will do that. but yeah, there's loads of stuff in there. So every day you get a prompt. So you'll be emailed and then you have access to lots of wonderful content. So there's like meditations, there's lots of live events that you can come and join us with. I've uploaded some of my worksheets, there's storytelling, like ancestor magic. There's a ritual that was done last night that you can listen to or watch. So yeah, please think about joining for that. And as I said, if you're wanting something to fill yourself back up with, it's a really lovely thing to do. So I'm joining in as well as being an instructor on there. And I last night began my bullet journal, which I'm setting up to be able to fill in for Samhain Fest. So I've got my witchy magical stickers, and I've written some information about the eclipse, and then I'm hopefully going to go through with each bit of the content and just make notes and write down things that are inspiring to me. So yeah, think about if you've got the time joining up. It's all free. You can do as much or as little as you would like to, but it might be a really nice way to just start as you mean to go on, filling yourself back up. So let's have a little look at this week then in particular. So we've talked about Samhain and we've talked about November, winter slowing down, but specifically for this week. So today is the first quarter moon in Capricorn, and then we're going to begin building up to the next full moon. So we've got the full moon lunar eclipse in Taurus next Tuesday. And so really towards the end of this week, we're going to start to feel the intensity of that energy building up. So Capricorn today, which is quite grounded, good working day. For me, it's been a good day to get organized and get set up for the week. We're moving into Aquarius tomorrow and Wednesday. Thursday and Friday will be Pisces. Now, what I would look out for this week is, Thursday and Friday, because it's going to be that waxing, almost gibbous moon phase in Pisces, which we know to be, emotional, perhaps a little bit sensitive. So just begin to pay attention to how you're feeling at the end of the week. And then particularly the weekend, Saturday and Sunday is going to be building full moon energy. So again, like waxing gibbous, but in Aries. So I know for me personally, Aries is a difficult sign. I get very angry and short-tempered. I seem to really lack patience on Aries day, and particularly if that is building up towards a full moon. Pisces is also difficult for me, so I've already gone through my diary. I'm checking out what have I got planned this weekend. What am I doing? I need to be really careful that I've just got lots of space and lots of time for myself. That's what I need, particularly on those Aries days. It may well be a bit more intense, the lead up to this full moon, because it's an eclipse, and this eclipse on Tuesday the 8th is going to close eclipse season, and it's sort of closing the Samhain portal as well. So the Samhain portal opening on the 31st of October and then closing with that astrological Samhain, or what is called true Samhain, which I think, as I said, is the 7th. So intense energy, but then closing down of that energy next week. So the veil between worlds is meant to be, or it's been talked about for a long time. When you look at folklore and all the traditions that were set up around Samhain, is based upon this idea, this understanding that the veil between worlds thins, but particularly in the Samhain portal. So in terms of your self-care, you just want to make sure that you're doing a lot of energetic protection. We talked about this last week, didn't we? Crystals and cleansing your house with smoke, and just, when you come home, if you've been out in the world, just try and cleanse your own energy. Salt baths are great. Salt and aromatherapy baths are wonderful. But just giving yourself time to process the intensity of what is going on. It's a wonderful time to connect with, as I said, your beloved dead and your ancestors, because the veil is thin. But it's also been a notorious time for spirits. So it wasn't just that this was a time to connect to ancestors, but because the veil is thin, it's also a time for mischievous spirits. And this is where I think, protect your house. And this is why root vegetables used to be turnips, were carved in the first place with such scary faces, because it was to protect against these naughty or mischievous spirits, and a lot of folklore is around the fae at this time of year. So really understanding the fae is not, cute and friendly like we are sort of taught to believe, but actually, particularly when you look at Irish folklore, they were really scared of the fae, and a lot of practices and traditions at these points in the year when the veil is thin is to protect and appease these spirits that can mess with people somewhat. So that would be my suggestion to in terms of self-care, just energy protection, using smoke, using essential oils, using crystals, and then just having a lot of time and space for meditation and yoga so that you're able to bring yourself back to center. I'm just going to turn the light on, because in honor of this shifting of the seasons, it's really dark. It's gone really dark as I've been talking to you, and that's interesting. So 4:20 in the afternoon, and it's going dark. So there you go. That really is the initiation into winter. The other thing that I wanted to share with you in terms of what I really like to do in November is I really like to plant my spring garden. So this is a really lovely, almost like ritualistic way to work with the wheel of the year, is to plant your spring bulbs at Samhain or near to Samhain, and they will begin to appear with Imbolc in February. So you can actually plant your bulbs with your intentions for early spring next year. And when they burst forth, they can remind you of the intentions that you set. So going to get your spring bulbs and then planting them now is a really, really lovely practice. And I've also been at the flower market this weekend, stocking up on lots of winter flowers. So I love winter violets and pansies, and my hellebores are going to begin to hopefully bloom soon. So getting all these lovely witchy flowers. But what I wanted to read you, I got this book from an antique fair in Ironbridge. Called A Victorian Posy. It's a really delightful book. There's a lot of beautiful artwork. Let me see if I can find. So lots of beautiful artwork and poetry, but kind of based around the seasons, really, and different plants. And I love kind of anything that's like vintage and flowery. So look at that for aconites. So I wanted to read you a poem about winter violets. Death white azaleas watched beside my bed and tried to tell me tales of southern lands. But they in hothouse air were born and bred, and they were gathered by a stranger's hands. They were not sweet, they never have been free, and all their pallid beauty had no voice for me. And all I longed for was one common flower, fed by soft mists and rainy English air. A flower that knew the woods, the leafless bower, the wet green moss, the hedges sharp and bare. A flower that spoke my language and could tell of all the woods and ways my heart remembers well. Then came your violets, and at once I heard The sparrows chatter on the dripping eaves, the full streams babbling inarticulate word, the plash of rain on big wet ivy leaves. I saw the woods where thick the dead leaves lie, and smelt the fresh earth scent, the scent of memory. The unleafed trees, the lichens green and grey, the wide, sad-coloured meadows, and the brown fields that sleep now and dream of harvest day, hiding their seeds like hopes in hearts pent down, 1,000 dreams, 1,000 memories. Your violets' voices breathed in unheard melodies. Unheard by all but me, I heard, I blessed the little English-speaking things for their sweet selves that laid my wish to rest, for their sweet help that lent my dreaming wings, and most of all, for all the thoughts of you, which make them smell more sweet than any other violets do. And that is by Edith Nesbit, who was around between, so the text is really little. Like my husband was just saying yesterday, I think you might need to go and get your eyes tested. I was like, no, seems he would be right. So 1858 to 1924. So yeah, and that is the painting that goes along with it. So I think I will leave you on that note. I think I've said all that I wanted to say for this episode. So I really hope you've enjoyed connecting to Samhain, connecting to this time of year. I would love to hear how you're honouring it, any of the little bits and pieces that you want to share. Please think about joining us for Samhain Fest, because I will be in there doing bits and pieces. And again, I'd like to hear how you're getting on. I'll be back next Monday and we'll be back to Moon Day musings from next week. So we'll be talking about the full moon lunar eclipse more next week, because obviously we will be the day before that. So yeah, I just wish you a really beautiful week. I really hope that you connect to the magic of this time of year, but I also just really hope that you find your personal connection, as I said before. So what does it mean to you? How is it speaking to you and moving through you? And what are your roots? So yeah, wishing you a beautiful, blessed Samhain, however you celebrate. And I will see you all next Monday. All right, take care, everybody. Bye.